friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to day 2 of my 2024 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Winter Birds and Frosty Fairy Friends. So I've stamped those images out on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I'm starting off with B01, B24, B26 and B29, and I'm going to start coloring in this bird down on the lower left, and I am placing my shadows down first with that B29. Then I'm going to start blending that out with the next shade, which is going to be the B26. Then I'll bring in the B24. I'm going to fill in the area on the top of his head and bring that a little bit lower on his chest and his wing. Fill in the tail, and then I'll come in with that B01 and fill in any remaining white space. And I really love how that combo works together. I think that B01 just really lifts those darker blue shades. And I am going to continue coloring the rest of the images with this same combo because I am actually creating a monochromatic card today. So this is for our current Lawn Fanatics challenge, and I recently did a monochromatic Halloween card. And every single time this challenge comes up, it's usually around the same time of year. So I've typically either done a Halloween or a fall card. So when I sat down to plan this one out, I was trying to think of what I could do differently, not only with the imagery, but also with the theme. And I realized that I've never done a monochromatic Christmas card, and since Christmas is just around the corner and I have already started my holiday card series, I thought now would be the perfect opportunity to do that. So that is what we are creating today. So just in case that term is new to you, a monochromatic card is just a card where the color palette is consistent across the board. All of the images, the background, any elements that you use on the card should be in the same color palette. And there can be variations in tone from lighter to darker, but there needs to be consistency with the color palette. Everything is the same. And so in the past I have done, well, my most recent one was a purple card. I've done gray. I've done an aqua blue gray kind of spooky theme. And then I have also done like a rust orange shade. So I wanted to do something very different than any of the other monochromatic cards that I've created. And I also wanted to stay away from red or green. I just felt like I wanted to do something a little bit different rather than go completely traditional. And so I decided to go with blue. I've always been a huge fan of blue and white. So if I can only have like one color, I really love like shades of blue. I just think it's so pretty, and there's so many different things that you can color in those tones. So I decided to do the birds today. I thought those would be fun. Typically these are colored like cardinals, which I have done in the past as well, but they can also be blue jays or just any kind of bluebird, because this is just a more general card when you're doing monochromatic and everything is the same. Obviously you're taking a little bit of artistic license. We don't have blue branches and blue pine cones in real life, but that's okay. Think of it kind of like those blue willow plates or the Delftware where everything is blue, you know, the trees, the buildings, the people, just in various shades. That's kind of the look that I'm going for today. And you can see that I am leaving some areas white for now, especially the birds' faces and the top of the nest and the ribbons on the gift. And that's just because I'm going to be bringing in some lighter shades of blue to have even more contrast. So everything will still be blue, but there'll just be even more variation in the tones. So before I get to that though, I am going to work on these branches, and I just put the B29 down at the bottom. I ended up skipping over the B26 and going straight into the B24, and then the B01, just because it felt like a little bit excessive to try to squeeze all 4 shades in there, but I definitely wanted that highlight, so I wanted to make sure I got that B01 at the top. And then once I have that in, I'm going to bring in those other 2 shades that I mentioned, and that is going to be B00 and B000. So I'm going to add a little bit of that B01 to the bird on the bottom's face, and then I'll start blending out both birds with the B00 and then the B000. I'll add the B000 into my nest. And I'm also going to use the B00 for the snow. And then I'll use all 3 of those shades for the ribbons on my gifts, just starting at the bottom and blending up with the other 2 shades. And I went back and forth on what to do about the beaks, if I should leave them light or if I should go dark. And I ended up deciding to go for the contrast. So I'm using the darkest 3 blues for all of the beaks. I even squeezed it in on the little ones there. And then I'm going to trim all of these images out with their matching dies, including the branches that I showed you earlier. For my background, I've trimmed down a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock with the largest of the small stitch rounded rectangle stackables from Lawn Fawn. And then I am going to treat this paper with my Rabbit Hole Designs powder tool. And I want to make sure to really treat that well because I'm going to be doing an emboss resist technique. So I need to make sure that none of my embossing powder sticks where I don't want it. So I did that, and now I'm going to stamp my sentiment and some snowflakes down using Versamark ink. So my sentiment is from the Joy to the Woods stamp set, and then the snowflakes are a mix of all 3 stamp sets. So there's something from all of them, including a tiny little snowflake from Joy to the Woods. So I am inking that up twice and just pressing down gently. I don't want to squish the ink and make it kind of splooge out so it's not crisp, but I also want to make sure that there's enough of that my embossing powder can really grip a hold. And so I'm going to coat that. It's Lawn Fawn white embossing powder that I just keep in this large tub so that it's easy to kind of pour out onto my panels. So I'm just making sure that that is really well coated anywhere that I have words or snowflakes. And then I'm going to heat my heat gun off to the side for about 30 seconds, and then I'll start bringing it to the cardstock to melt that powder. And I like to come at it from both the back and the front, just to minimize the warping of the cardstock and also to prevent kind of like scorching the cardstock. If you accidentally stay too long in one place, it'll leave behind brown marks, which don't look nice. So just being really careful to keep moving back and forward until everything is melted and shiny. And then I'll set that aside for now. And in the meantime, I'm going to do an insert for the inside of my card because I will be using a dark card base. So I just popped another piece of white cardstock in my MISTI that I die cut with the same die. I kept the snowflakes exactly where they were. I just replaced the sentiment and took away the joyful wishes and added in Merry Christmas instead, which is also from Joy to the Woods. And now that I have that ready, I'm going to place a little bird on the sentiment just to bring some of the outside to the inside. The first bird I tried, I didn't like how it looked on the sentiment, so I switched it out for one that was facing in a different direction, and I liked that one much better, so I'll just pick that up with the door of my MISTI and stamp that down right over the M in Christmas, and I thought that turned out pretty cute. So I'll set that aside and go back to my background now, and I'm going to start blending on some Distress Oxide inks. The first shade that I'm using is Salvage Patina. I'm going to place that right in the center over the sentiment and just blend that out in kind of an oval shape. And then I'm going to darken that up with some Salty Ocean, and I will bring that in from all of the sides. That is quite a dark shade and quite a juicy ink pad, so it's going to lay down pretty dark. So I'm just going to add that wherever I want it, and try not to creep too much into that salvage patina just yet. I want to maintain a little bit of that lighter center. I'll go back to that ink blending tool and just work over the transition areas and try to smooth out that blend a little bit more. And then once I'm happy with how that's looking, I'm going to darken up the edges even further by bringing in a third shade, which is going to be Blueprint Sketch. And the three of these together really resemble closely the Copic marker shades that I had used for my images. So I really, really liked how these three worked together and how that came out. So once I have the Blueprint Sketch laid in, I'm going to go back to the Salty Ocean. I'll creep a little bit more into the center, but still save some of that space for the Salvage Patina, so we have a little bit of a lighter area there. But it needs to be dark enough that you can clearly read the sentiment. So I am going to just keep adding that ink on until I reach a level of saturation with those inks that I like. I want it to be nice and rich in tone. And then once I am happy with this, I'm going to start to remove any of the ink that is sitting over top of the embossing just by buffing it with a dry paper towel. You can see that made it nice and bright white again. And then I'm going to start distressing this background. So I'm going to add some plain water to an acrylic block and then pick that up with a thin paintbrush and splatter that all over the background. I'll let that react with that Distress Oxide ink for about 30 seconds, and then I'll blot that up with my paper towel. Then I also wanted to do some splatter with the lightest and the darkest of those inks. So first I'll start with the Salvage Patina, just press that onto my block, add a bit of water to make it nice and fluid, and tap that all over the background. I'm kind of creating like different layers of snowflakes and just giving it some texture and some interest. And then I will also add in the Blueprint Sketch. Just add a touch of water to that, and then I'll do some splatter. Adding a little bit of that darker color in there just gives the sky some depth. So I'll have that, and I'm trying to stay a little bit more toward the outside edges with the darkest. And then I'm going to also add in some white using some Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. It's like an acrylic paint. And again, I will add some water to that to make it more fluid. And then I'm going to tap this all over the background as well, which is going to really brighten things up and make it look like the snow is falling all around, like we're having a little snowstorm on this scene. And then once I am satisfied with the amount of splatter on there, I'm just going to set this panel aside to dry. And now I'm ready to start assembling. So I'm first going to take that insert and glue that to the inside of a Blue Jay card base. And I'm just lining that up in the center so we get a nice frame of that dark cardstock showing on the outer edges. And then I will do the same thing for the focal panel. They're both die cut with the largest of those small stitch rounded rectangle stackables, so they're the same size on both the inside and the outside. And again, just making sure that is on there nice and straight and pressing that down into place until it's adhered, and then I can bring in my images, and I have popped them all up on some foam tape. So I'll start setting this scene by taking that larger branch and placing that down toward the lower right. And I want that branch to overhang from the focal panel into the Blue Jay cardstock that is the card base, just for a different look and kind of to incorporate the card base into the background. Then I added the smaller branch up toward the top left. Then I'm taking one of the birds and placing that on the lower right branch and adding a snowdrift. And then I'm looking for the other small snowdrift in this little set there. And I didn't add any foam tape to the snow because it's going to be sitting on the branches that are already popped up. Then I'm going to take the little bird nest and I'll peel off the release paper for that. And I'm going to add that toward the back of that larger branch. And I will take one of the small birds and place that up on the top branch. And I'm also going to add a little gift next to him. And I decided to tuck the bottom white edge behind the snow. I just liked the look of that better. I'm also tucking the bird's feet behind the branches. And then I'm going to take the other large bird that's kind of swooping into the scene and place that over on the right hand side, just above the sentiment. And I'll place one of these little berry stems into that bird's mouth. Then I'll put the other small bird into the nest. I just shifted him over so that we could still see the snowflake behind. And then I'll add the other little Christmas gift on the larger branch between the large bird and the baby bird. Then I'm going to start adding some of these accessory images in to complete the look. So I'm taking some of these little branches that I colored. They look similar, but one of them is from the winter birds and one of them is from the frosty fairy friends. And I just stamped them down over and over so that I had like 10 of them to work with because I wasn't sure how many I was going to need to complete the scene. I just shifted that bird down a little bit lower because I did want another one of these little pine branches back behind him, which I'll add in a little bit. But for now, I'm adding one down to the lower branch and to the part that's kind of sticking off. And then I'll also add a couple of pine cones hanging from that. And then I was playing with the berries. I thought maybe I would use those kind of stuck in between the branches and the pine cones, but I couldn't really get them to work how I wanted them to. So I'm also going to take one of the branches and stick it on the small lower branch on the top and then add a couple more pine cones to that. I wanted another of these pine boughs to go behind the flying bird. So that one I just peeled off the foam tape and glued flat to the card, and I did have to peel up the bird a bit to get that tucked under there, but then I just stuck her back in place. And I tried one of the berry branches sticking off the top part of the branch, but it looked too strange, like all by itself, and I couldn't find another place to add one. It just wasn't working no matter what I tried. So I ended up taking off the berries from the top branch as well, and I'm going to replace that with another pine bough. And I'll add 2 more pine boughs towards the base at the bottom of each of those branches, and my battery died right then. I'm so sorry, but you can see them now. And then I am adding a few sparkling clear sequins. I just wanted something that looked, like more snowfall and just added to that whole feel of like the snow falling all around you. So I am going to place a few of those, and then once I've let them dry, I'm going to fill in the centers with some Stardust Stickles, which again, it's all clear, so it still maintains the single color palette. And then I also wanted to have a little bit of glitter on the snow, and I thought it would be fun to have it on the ribbons for the gifts and on the pine boughs. So I'm just kind of scribbling that onto the pine boughs so it gives them a bit of a frosty look. And then that is going to finish off this card. So I'm going to lift that up so that you can see it a little bit closer and catch all of that detail and the sparkle and shine. And I'll also give you another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. Also leave me a comment and let me know if you've ever created a monochromatic Christmas card, and if you have, what color did you go for? I'm really curious. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted when I post new videos. All of the supplies that I use will be listed and linked in the description bar below in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And I'll also put up day 2 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series on screen in case you'd like to keep watching. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.